Hey guys, welcome to our first episode of Insight Engine. Chamara, a good friend of mine, we are working together for a while. Chamara, please, if you introduce yourself, what you are doing, how things are going, then it would be great.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate you sending me the invite for this podcast, Rocky. And I'm privileged to be the first person to interview. I'll give you a little bit of a background about myself and about Anthos Consulting. I come from an engineering background. I started studying aeronautical engineering at UNSW after coming from Sri Lanka to Australia on a scholarship. And
Yes.
the main reason why I wanted to study aeronautical engineering was I wanted to design planes. But I realized only about 1% of aeronautical engineers end up designing planes, and
Okay.
about the remaining 99% ended up designing structures. And I hated structural analysis and that part of aeronautical engineering. It wasn't really an area that I enjoyed being in. So at this time, UNSW introduced the mechatronics engineering program, and I straight away jumped in because it felt natural to me to be studying mechatronics engineering because I've always had a knack for computers and software. And I loved making things that move. And to me, it sounded like mechatronics was something that combined both these things.
Great.
So I switched to mechatronics engineering, and the long story short, even before I finished uni, I got a job in Singapore working for one of the semiconductor manufacturers. So my first job out of uni was actually programming robots that move things around this semiconductor manufacturing facility. I got really good at programming robots and implementing complex automation systems. But
Great.
semiconductor industry is this industry that moves at a breakneck speed. I'm sure you've heard about how
Yeah.
things keep getting smaller and smaller. But the flip side of that is once you install equipment in a semiconductor manufacturing facility, 3 or 4 years out, this equipment is actually obsolete. So you got to either upgrade it to the next generation of equipment or completely replace it
I
with
see.
something new. So working in this environment, I got really good at transforming complex automation systems. We implement a system, and then 2 or 3 years later, we have to plan to upgrade or and to transform this system and put in new equipment. So essentially, I was in semiconductor manufacturing for 10 years. Over these 10 years, I got really good at complex systems transformation. And this was around the time I came back to Australia. When I came back to Australia, I joined Commonwealth Bank of Australia. They spent 1.2 billion over 2.5 years.
Okay.
And there are more than 5,000 people involved in the end-to-end transformation program. I was lucky enough to be part of the
Great.
team
Yeah.
that worked on the strategy for the transformation. And I think today I'm probably the first person that Commonwealth Bank hired without any
I
financial
see.
services experience at that seniority level.
Okay.
Working in Commonwealth Bank's strategy and transformation practice, it gave me a really good insight into the consulting world because their strategy and transformation operated like an internal consultancy. So you're working on one project one day, and then a few months later, once you set that project up, then you have to go into another project. I got a bit of a taste for consulting. So after a few
Got it.
years of doing this, I thought, yeah, I wanted to give consulting a try. So I actually switched over to consulting and joined Capgemini Consulting, one of the largest consulting firms. And I was with them for about 3.5 years, again, part of their technology and business transformation practice. I was lucky enough to lead some really complex transformation programs while I was with them.
Okay.
And
Okay.
this was around the time I got actually headhunted by this company called Computer Science Corporation. Computer
I
Science
see.
Corporation is an American company that had set up presence in Australia, and they were largely invested in data centers and infrastructure outsourcing. And this was around the mid 2010s, I think around
Okay.
2014,
Okay.
15. And cloud was picking up, and computer science corporations, that cloud was going to decimate a lot of their business. And they were looking for people to come in and help them bring new service offerings to market. So they hired me to this funky role they call innovation executive. And
Okay.
because of my financial services background, they said, we want you to work on our financial services account strategy. So I was lucky enough to work on the financial sector account strategy for two of their largest accounts at the time. And those two accounts combined, I think was about 30% of their total revenue in Australia.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yes. I worked on the account strategies for those two accounts, and we created the new service offerings that we brought to market. And on the back of that, CSC actually acquired another company called UXE. So they went from about 3,000 people in Australia to 6,000 people in Australia. And
Okay.
then
Okay.
after a little while after that, they reversed my business unit, which was spun off out of HP. And that's how DXC Consulting or DXC Technology was formed. Right? And when this reverse merger happened, they went from 6,000 people to 12,000 people in Australia. And to me, working in large organizations was something that I wasn't really enjoying that much. And at the Sealan Nagam, who was the MD for DXC at the time, he saw that there was a risk of me leaving DXC and he wanted to try and keep me. So he came to me and said, Chamara, we want you to set up a new startup inside DXC to drive our digital transformation. Right. So he said, yes, it was a funded startup. You have an unlimited account book that you can talk to. And this was like a dream come true for me because I really enjoyed working in the startup space. And so that was my first foray into a startup world, to be honest, even though I had worked in bringing new service offering to the market before. So I set up the digital transformation practice and I grew it to $10 million annual revenue over 2 years. But then at the same time, I felt like I was this ant trying to run really fast. And I had this giant iron ball chained to my ankle. That was all the bureaucracy, all the politics, and all the governance that you have to deal with in a large organization. And
Yeah.
at the same time, I also had a little one. So I had to make a choice whether to stay in DXC and look after the corporate baby or leave DXC and do something else and look after my actual baby. So I made that conscious decision to leave DXC at the time and decided to set up Anthos Consulting. That was how I came to be. And that was in 2018. We've been around for 6 years. And one of the things that I wanted to focus on when I set up in Anthosa is my career took a little bit of a different path to most people that go through from university to consulting and then do the client side. Because I went from university to client side and then I spent 14 years in client side before I went into consulting. So this gave me a really good understanding of what the customers are looking for. And at the same time, when I was in the consulting world, I saw how and essentially what they usually do is they have a standard process that they run for every customers and they go and run the same process for every customer. And then they split out the same slide deck in different color palettes and then advise them to do exactly the same. So when I set up Anthos, what I wanted to do was I want to set up a consulting company that actually really went in, try to understand what the customer's real problems are and help them to get strategies to solve the problems they have.
I see.
Rather than telling them to follow exactly the same that you told me. So what we do is we create boutique strategies for customers. That's why we consider ourselves a boutique strategy consulting firm. And obviously, like setting up a new company from scratch compared to setting up a startup inside a large corporation, they came with different challenges, right? So obviously, when I was setting up a new practice in DXC, it was a funded startup and I had a large client customer book that I couldn't go and talk to. Whereas when you're starting from scratch, initially, when I set up Anthosa, I had some former customers from my past consulting days that trusted me to deliver, that came and actually engaged me. But at the same time, large part of that was about actually how do I create new customers, right? So that's when lead generation and bringing in new customers became something that I had to do. For the first 2 or 3 years of Anthosa, I still managed to grow the business, not massively, but a little bit. But that was mainly through meeting people, having coffee conversations and getting new business through that. But then in 2020, this thing called COVID happened. I'm sure you're familiar with that. You couldn't meet people for coffee. Right? So that's when obviously I pivoted to LinkedIn lead generation. But I think like in 2020, when I started LinkedIn lead generation, LinkedIn wasn't as mature as a platform. And also compared to selling a product or a simple solution, what we sell is more sort of complex consulting, which needs a level of trust, right? But at the time, somehow the LinkedIn lead generation didn't work. But at the time, LinkedIn also introduced the Sales Navigator, which allowed you to be able to actually build up the account maps and identify the sort of the key stakeholders in organization. That's what we've been doing for the last few years. Right? From 2020 until about the end of 2023, that's what we were doing. We build up the account map and then based on the account map, we target the individuals that we want to connect to through our network. And then we engage with them to try and have the conversation around bringing new business.
Yeah, great. I have one question while you were talking about when you were working in that large organization. So you felt you were chained, right? there are bureaucracy, there are other issues. Like for an example, I never worked in a big organization, but my work career is very short, like 4 5 months 6 months in a company. I never been able to cope up with the manager or anything. But what do you think if you had that entrepreneurial urge in you, right? You are not like just for earning money to work, so you are something else that I can already understand. But how can one company keep this kind of people, like not making them feel they're chained, but giving them the freedom? Because now you see you have the power to do a lot of things, but they are missing you. Maybe they can change something in their organization to keep people like you. Is it possible to keep people like you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you actually asked a really important question. So what we talk about is actually there's no such thing as BAU. Once you deliver a project, in the past, people used to talk about BAU or business as usual. That's usually
Right.
the steady state, right? So once you put something into production, you keep using it for the next 5 or 10 years. And then what we talk about is actually there's no such thing as BAU. Once you put something in, you have to continually improve the system, right? And in that, at Anthosa, what we advise for our customers is to actually go into this mindset of continually innovating and bringing in new services to market or new features to market, and then obviously operationalizing them in your core business so that you can run them alongside your existing services, right? So what we talk about is this continuous innovation and continuous transformation as core capabilities for our customers. That's what we advise them on.
Okay.
So just going back to your question about how can you actually keep people like me who are that entrepreneurial mindset, who likes change and who wants to drive change in organizations, the way to do that is actually to switch to the methodology that we advocate for our customers, where you continually bring new things into the organization and then continually adapt them into the core part of your business. So the continuous innovation, you can think of it like the innovation hub or innovation
Is it
lab.
like keep exciting them,
Yeah, it
keep
gives them
them? Yeah.
new ideas to work on. And I know Google has this principle of giving people 20% of their time to work on a passion project. And then that's not really controlled. And then the engineers end up picking up whatever they want to work on and then keep working on that. Yes, it's a really good way to bring new products into the market as well. But then in the corporate world, sometimes it doesn't really work as well because engineers can sometimes go off in a tangent that might not align with the organizational philosophy.
I
And
see.
for a company like Google, it's okay because they're quite big. But for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
customers that we work with, who are usually medium to large enterprises or fast scale ups, that might not be the best case. So what we talk about is creating this innovation and transformation as core capabilities of the business so that people in the business actually have projects that are funded by the organization that they can work on that are quite exciting. So that's one of the things, right? So having exciting work is one of the things. And the other thing is obviously reducing the level of bureaucracy or the level of red tape people have to go through. And that again is one of the things that we advocate in our operating model design service offering. So what we talk about is actually reducing the red tape, moving the decision making power down to the teams, but
Okay.
at the same time, setting the vision and the beacon on the hill so that the teams know which direction to head to. But at the same
Okay.
time, in terms of the day-to-day thing, they don't need to always go and seek approval. They can actually operate with some level of autonomy, right? So giving that autonomy for the team members to operate, that's a good way to keep smart and motivated people in your organization.
Yeah.
And then if I take another element, it's probably that element of networking. So having people who are like-minded, that you can actually build small communities around the organization. Right? Having these capabilities are actually what will help organizations keep smart and passionate individuals in the organization.
Yeah, a really good explanation how we can really handle it. It's if I just summarize it, like what I have understood, it just don't make the environment in such a way that they get bored, because they, their brain is wired to find something new always. As you have started your journey being an engineer, then you have slowly started this entrepreneurial journey. So I have also few clients, like for me, I've talked with them. They're also engineers. Do you find if an engineer is starting a business and then a business guy is starting a business, is there any difference in way of thinking? Because you see, you are always building things, it's all logic, then creating a process, so making it perfect, right? So how do you see yourself as a business person now and being impacted of your background career in engineering?
Again, a good question, Rocky. To me, I think this is one of the learnings for me as I built
Right.
the business and was starting to scale the business. I felt like I didn't have enough of a business acumen and my business knowledge was a little bit short, right? So in 2020, when COVID happened and we didn't have to travel, I actually saved a ton of time from not having to travel. So what I did was I went back to business school and actually did my MBA in 2020.
Okay, that's great. Uh,
So I think if I were to answer your question, a business person starting a business versus engineer starting a business, there's no difference. People need the business knowledge. But whereas engineering people, I think sometimes what they have as an advantage is the fact that they know how to engineer things, they know how to solve things, and they can actually use that and then build the business model around it. But having said that, though, I've met loads of business people who come from a business background that have actually learned how to solve problems and how to create unique value propositions that can be quite useful.
yeah.
So it doesn't matter the background, but I think like what matters is knowing that each of these skills are important and being able to use the skills that you need in order to actually deliver a value that your customers can benefit from.
Definitely. And you mentioned your service, the consultation that you provide is a bit complex, right? So when you are doing the outreach and getting the leads, definitely the credibility part is huge, right? People don't know if you can really do it. So what's your take on like also starting your own podcast when maybe you are inviting your customers, like for an example, the boutique, the companies that you can help. So if you bring them, then maybe you are talking with them about their problem and solving those in a podcast and then publishing those podcasts so that your target audience can listen and then know about you, and then you can do the lead generation for your business. I'm asking this for your fellow people, those who are starting consulting business. So how you look at it until now doing the business for I think 4 or 5 years. So what do you think? What's the best way of getting customer?
I think like podcasts are one of the good ways to try and bring people in. And having said that, though, I think they're building the audience is the important part, right? And then building
Yeah.
the audience is something you can do through podcasts, speaking in public, creative speeches, finding forums, blogs, or publishing a book. And there are multiple ways to do it. What matters is working out what works for you as an individual and then using that to actually create loads and loads of content that you can actually share out to people that explains your viewpoint, that explains how you think about the world, and then getting them to understand because people will come and talk to you if they know that A, you have a unique way of thinking, B, it's something that can help them solve the problems they have. So if you're somebody that actually has that innate ability to see a problem, and then if you're someone who can actually create a solution for that problem, and then if you're someone who can actually talk about it
Right.
eloquently and
Right.
get the message across, it will help you to build the audience. And once you build the audience, then yes, you can actually create leads for new business through that as well.
Definitely. And the other question that I have, a lot of people actually think of starting their own business, right? You are in a very stable job in a big company, then thinking of starting a business. How does it feel? And how have you break that, maybe any kind of barrier that was stopping you? Or because I'm sure like a lot of people listening to this are thinking of starting their own business, but somehow they're getting stuck. So how is this journey like, and how have you started it?
I think if I were to go back and do things differently, I would probably do things differently, right? Because
Okay.
I took the brave step of leaving the corporate world and then going into the startup world straight away. And I actually started 3 companies at the beginning, right?
Wow.
So the first one was actually a small company that focused on small and medium enterprises, so small businesses. Right. So I wanted to help them with their digital marketing and digital engagement, right? But what I soon realized was that's an area that's very crowded and
Yeah,
very
very
competitive.
crowded.
There are lots
Where
of
is that area?
agencies are
Yeah.
competing in that space. Like gave up on that after 1 or 2 years. And then the second one was actually a platform business that I built. This was a platform for customers that are running transformation programs to use as the platform for driving the transformation in the organization. So we built the software platform and we had 2 customers on board. And with the first customer that we onboarded, there was another third-party consulting company that was working in that customer's environment, and they actually wanted to acquire this software. So I ended up selling the software to them. But the learnings from that is actually, that's another way to think about, right? And sorry, and the third one that I started is Anthosa, which is what my primary focus is today. But the learnings from what I'm trying to explain there is, if you're leaving the corporate world and trying to do something new, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Spread your risks, right? This is nobody taught. I didn't learn finance in school, right? So to me, it came intuitively that I can't put all my eggs in one basket. I need to manage the risk. So that's what I did. But I think a lot of people nowadays, what they do is they don't actually straight away take the step that I took, which is the drastic step of leaving the corporate world and starting something new. They focus on a startup while they are still in their main job, and then get it as a side hustle and grow the side hustle. And when the side hustle grows enough, then they leave the corporate world, right? So that I guess is the sort of the second way. But I think, to me, I think it's about figuring out what works for you. If, because someone can maybe focus on that growing the side hustle as a way to do things, but for some people it might not work. So if you're someone like me, building the side hustle is not going to work, then the only step to take is to leave the corporate world and then maybe start take a couple of shots at and think you can add value.
Yeah. And also the side hustle part depends on the kind of business you are starting. If it requires too much engagement, then it's not possible. And another, my last question actually. So, as a business person myself, a lot of the time I feel like it's really hard to switch off. Like you are always thinking about your business. When you are working for someone, actually you just get out of the work. Like, most of the time it's really easy to switch off. But when you're running your own business, it's always back in your mind. You, even if you're not working, you are working. You're thinking about something. Okay, this next project, next thing. And then also constant, it's very, because you are in engineering, right? Now you are also in sales, because you are seeing your revenue going up and then going down, getting a new deal, then losing a deal. So the emotional journey, it's like roller coaster, right? It's going up, going down, and it's always making you feel in a different way. And then people get exhausted because they can't switch off. So what I have found that helped me is like doing like completely different thing, like just getting somewhere, then doing something that's like totally out of these business ideas, and then trying to be in that moment and then come back again. And also not thinking too much about money. So in the beginning, I was like, I have this Excel sheet. So every 1 hour, I used to check it. So now I don't even look at it, like just keep doing business and whatever happens. So what's your take on this? If someone is getting exhausted, always thinking about it, like, have you felt like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think at the beginning I definitely felt that. And with the work that I do, sometimes some of the projects are like 3 months, some of the projects are like 1 to 2 years, right? If you get one of those 1 to 2 year projects where you have a constant involvement where you can drive some revenue, then it's good. But if projects that are like 3, 4 months and you have to continually keep selling new ones, then it can actually be quite exhausting. And I definitely find that it can be hard to switch off, right? For me, like, during COVID, what happened was you started to work a lot more from home as well. I think that made things even more difficult for people to switch off, because your living environment and your work environment is the same, right? So what I have started doing is, actually, I've got one area in the house that I work. That's the only area where I work. And if when I'm sleeping, I think of something, I actually keep a piece of paper next to my bed and I just write it on the paper, because I know in the morning when I sit down to work, I can pick it up and I write it down so that I don't forget. But knowing that it's there lets me go back to sleep and then pick it up in the morning. And then the only problem I have is, actually, if I think of something in the shower, I don't have a way to address that.
I see.
And sorry, Rocky, one of the other things that I do is, actually, at the end of the day, when I finish work, I leave the office space that I work in. And also, I actually, as a habit, I change into my home clothes. And to me, that's, I'm done for the day. And when I change into my home clothes, like, I don't usually pick up my work after that. So being able to do that is actually like a very clear way of switching off and knowing that your work time is over now. Whether it's 5:30 or whether it's 6:30 or 7:30, keep your work clothes on until then. And then now when you finish that, take it off. And that gives your mind a clear signal that, yes, work time's over.
Yeah, actually, you can fool your mind in different ways if it's bothering you, and like having different zones definitely helps a lot. And so, one last question. I thought this will be the last question, but I think this question I'm planning to ask everyone is, as we are like changing this podcast, we are a lead generation company, right? So, I want to ask every person, what's their tips for similar businesses to do lead generation? So, should they hire in-house or external agency, then what kind of agency, or what's the struggle? Because yesterday I was talking with a person, he's a professor, just converting. He took 2 months, 2 weeks of vacation. Now he's starting consulting. So now he's confused. He's not a salesperson. What to do? He's a professor. So yeah, if you can just share your experience.
I think like what I've learned over the last 6 years in running my own business and doing lead generation is that there's no one way that you can say is the only way that will work. You need to have multiple ways to do it. And obviously using an agency like yours, Rocky, is one of the good ways to have a consistent pipeline of work, right? And I appreciate that work, that aspect of it, right? But at the same time, what you need to do is constantly keep connecting with new people and use these new connections or use your existing connections to get introductions to new people and connect with people. Connecting with people and talking with people is the best way to try and get new business. Yes, it takes time. Yes, takes time to build rapport. And sometimes it's not about actually talking about work. It's about sometimes asking, how can I help you?
Yeah.
And sometimes they might be in a position where they need some help. So you can make an introduction for them that will help them, but in turn, they will actually end up helping you one day. Networking on LinkedIn is actually one of the good ways to try and help each other and then be able to do that in a very effortless way. Because if you were to actually catch up in person and have that conversation, it can be difficult, but it can be time consuming. And especially when you're running your own business and you're busy with selling and delivering, you can sometimes feel like you don't have the time to meet people in person and have that coffee. And LinkedIn actually reduces that effort. So that's one of the good things about LinkedIn. But at the same time, I guess the flip side of LinkedIn is sometimes you can get sucked into these conversations that can actually consume time that can be productive. So it's important to be careful of that. But I guess just going back to your question around lead generation, engaging with people, what people post and connecting and amplifying each other's message is the best way to try and build that network on LinkedIn.
And actually, there are many ways, and I'll just add two options that could be really useful. Is like whenever you are consulting someone, talking with any businesses, every day you are solving some problems, right? So, what if you have solved a problem today? Just document it and write something about it, or create a video, short video. Don't think about the quality and anything. Just create it, solve it, and then post it. So that could be one way. The other way could be like finding similar problem that people are posting on LinkedIn and then go and comment there, because in the comment section enthusiast people about that problem are there, and those who are commenting actually they are trying to socialize, like they're very open to talk to others. So it's very easy to create a community through commenting. Like, I have seen a lot of people are not taking it seriously. Like, just go to a post that's like in one of your interests, or like the topic that you are consulting about, and then just go and comment, write a comment, because that person has his own reach, right? And then you are getting the free reach through his post in the comment section. So that could be also a very crucial way. Yeah, that's all. Like, Chamara, thank you very much for your time.